welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Diane, your lactation consultant.
And I'm Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by a brand new sponsor, Just In Case Nursing Pads. Just In Case is committed to making breastfeeding more comfortable, less stressful, and more sustainable with their reusable nursing pads. And today's episode is also brought to you by Sarah's Chill. Never worry about safely storing your breast milk or formula. Again, Sarah's Chill was invented by a mom for moms and offers guaranteed convenience with their double-walled stainless steel container. And we'll hear more from our sponsors later, but the sponsors make this podcast possible. And please head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page if you need anything and see if you can give any of them your business. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address, and you'll get episodes sent straight to your inbox every Monday. And now Diane has our review of the week.
And it comes from two places, I guess, but it comes from Gmail. The one I'm going to read is from our Gmail, but she also put one on iTunes. So I was like, thank you for the double love. That was very nice. But I'm going to read the Gmail one because it was a little bit shorter. Hi, I've been listening to your podcast for a few weeks now. My second baby is 9 weeks old, and I wish I would have had y'all when I had my first baby. You have helped so much. I'm obsessed. Y'all are amazing. My question has to do with freezing breast milk. I pump 1 time a day now to store breast milk to feed my baby when I return to work. He'll be 6 months when I return to work. I've been freezing 4-ounce bags for the future, but will he ever need more than 4 ounces in a bottle? Even when he is 7 months, 8 months, and so on? I understand my body makes what he needs and all, but with it being frozen months in advance, how will the milk have what he needs later? Thanks.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. And I answered her briefly, but I did want to put this out there because it is a question that we get a lot. And you never need more than 4 ounces for your baby. Your milk changes to adapt to what your baby is, the growth pattern that they're in and what they're doing at that time and what they need. So it's more concentrated. The milk is more concentrated. You never need more volume. They get what they need from what they're getting. So leaving 4 ounces in a bottle is enough, even when your baby is 10, 11, 12 months old. It's totally fine. 4 ounces is plenty for them. And even when your milk is frozen, it gives them what they need. Of course, fresh milk is always the best, but when you freeze your breast milk to give to your baby while you're at work, that is still the best option for them.
That is still a very, very close second best.
Yes. So don't even think about the fact that, does it have what they need? Yes.
It does. Yeah.
It's perfect. And so many people do it, and it's perfect. So thank you so much.
People say bottle feeding is breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm.
You're giving them breast milk.
Yeah.
That's the best thing.
So thank you so much for sending us the email and for the review both on iTunes and for sending us an email telling us how much you love us. We love to hear it. No, I'm just kidding. But
send us messages about how much you love us. Thank you. Goodbye.
I know. That's all we really need, is just to know that we're loved and, whatever.
Everybody needs that in life, right?
Yeah, that's true. They do. But we really love to hear that you're getting on with your breastfeeding.
And your questions. I think this is cool. I like the questions in the beginning.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. So shoot us a message, shoot us an email, put it on iTunes, whatever works for you. We get them all. And
iTunes is best, though. If you can do iTunes, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it is.
But if you don't have it, don't worry.
And that's what I got. And today we got a really heavy topic.
Yeah. So what happens? How is breastfeeding impacted when your birth doesn't go either the way you wanted it to go, or there's emergency interventions or, unexpected things? How does that impact breastfeeding?
Or does it, right?
Or does it
impact?
Right.
Yeah.
Does it at all? What do you see?
I see a lot of the time I do see it impact breastfeeding. I see a lot of things, right? So I see things going in all different directions, but often, if birth does not go as planned, and that could be, anything.
That could be a million different things.
That could be so much.
Because we talk, what's a perfect birth? I don't even know. I guess we would say, in a textbook, we would say, labor that comes on by itself at, past 38 weeks. And, things just kind of go, quote unquote, smoothly. And there's no medical interventions. And, it's hard to say exactly what perfect is, because even when it is like so-called perfect, or it just goes, what medical people might call smoothly, if it wasn't what you expected, and is it ever, especially if it's your first birth, oh my God, I don't think it matters how it goes. Like, that's going to be just emotionally and psychologically, it's a big thing. And it's going to impact everything, including breastfeeding.
I think, some people, you've got two kinds of people when it comes down to this. You have some people who go into birth with kind of that whole, well, I feel like I'm prepared, but I'm not going to have any expectations, and what happens, happens.
Wow. Who's that?
And then you have people that are, plan it, prepare for it, hire a doula, have all the, do all the classes, have a birth plan, and really have, know what they want for their birth. And neither way is wrong. Like, there is no wrong there. But what I want people to really know is, or really understand, that regardless of what happens in your eyes, like if it, like Abby was saying, like if it feels like it wasn't the perfect birth for you,
exactly,
regardless of what any medical professional will say, that's okay. Like, it's okay for you to feel like that. And what we hear a lot is, oh, but the baby's fine. What's the problem? And that's not an okay response.
At least you had a healthy baby.
At least you have a healthy baby. Well, duh. Like, of course, like that's what everybody wants. Yes, everybody wants a healthy baby, obviously. And everybody wants a healthy parent, obviously. But it's okay to be disappointed if you had a C-section and didn't plan for that. It's okay to be disappointed if you were induced and you didn't want to be induced. That's okay. You can be, and that's just like two very small examples, but you can be disappointed in that. And you can mourn that, and you can, wish that it had gone differently. That's okay. I mean, don't feel like you need to be making excuses just because you came out of it healthy, so to speak. But
yeah, this is real grief and loss.
Mm-hmm.
This is, you are allowed to grieve the loss of the birth that you wanted to have. And like, it's absolutely nonsense that anybody would say anything different.
Yeah, that drives me crazy.
And like some of it, I mean, a lot of births, I would say most births, are absolute chaos, especially if you're in a hospital. It's, at least mine was. So if mine was, it means everybody's was, because I am the litmus test for all experiences. No, I mean, you're going into a place where they have policies and protocols and, the way things are supposed to go. And you can, you can plan and you can all of that. But when it comes down to it, they have the final say of what's going to go down. And you can end up with, I went into the hospital and I didn't want an epidural. I didn't have a doula. I didn't have anything like that. I didn't have anything except for the fear of this needle that they refused to show us. She was like, I'm not going to show you the needle. It's too scary. So I'm like, well, if you can't even show us the needle, I'm not going to do that. So I just said, no. And then I was induced twice because the first time didn't work. So, it comes on, labor comes on, and I'm just like, what is happening? What's going on? And like, they're coming in and out like, oh, I don't know what they're saying. And, kind of like, you can, they really wanted me to have an epidural because that's usually what people do. And it's much easier for people in the hospital if you are just doing what most people do. It helps them get through your birth. And so I ended up having the epidural. And I remember this nurse came in and he goes, and I should be like, wow, what are the nicest things to say? But I was just like, what? He comes in and he goes, I know that you really wanted to do this without an epidural, and, but it's okay, to get it. But I know that you didn't want to. And I know, and he was like really validating, like, but I was also like, now I'm in hard labor.
Yeah.
I'm like, where's the guy? Where's the guy with that big scary needle? The big scary needle is what I want jabbed into my spine right now. Please and thank you. Please go get him. And then, so then there's an episiotomy, and then they're yelling at me to push and telling me I'm pushing wrong. And then I lost all this blood. And it's like, it was terrible. It was terrible. And then she's like, do you want to try to breastfeed? And I'm like, okay. Like, that was the last thing I wanted to do right then.
Mm-hmm.
When Jack was born, when he came out, I looked down at him and I went, oh my God, I totally forgot what we were doing here. I completely, it was so awful. I completely forgot I was there to have a baby. I was like, oh yeah. Oh, all right. There he is. And then they're immediately latching him on. And I'm just like, man, I just want to go into a closet and shut the door.
The loss of control is unbelievable and very unexpected, I think, for everybody. Like, you don't know what to expect when you're going in there.
Right.
There's no concept of what to expect.
No, and they tell you all these things that you don't understand, and they're just, beforehand, and they tell you, it's not a great place to have a baby. No. Like, honestly, it's not, of course people do it all the time and whatever. That's how our culture is right now. But like, it's just not like the coziest place to have a baby. And then you have to be there around all of these people. Oh, that was the other thing, is like the baby, like Jack was he was not coming out. That's when they decided to have, after a long time of me pushing and him not moving, is when they decided to do an episiotomy. But in the meantime, they had brought in all of the residents. They brought in like 10 people to stand at my vagina and watch.
Yeah.
Because it was like an unusual situation. So they're like, yeah, come on here. We're going to watch this. What? Like, what an absolute, of course I wasn't even in the room. I was like on planet 9, whatever. I was not there to be like embarrassed, but now I'm just like, what an absolute violation of my privacy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had that happen too. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. I know, it really, then you said, like, then when you go to breastfeed, and breastfeeding can be very challenging without all the intervention and without all the trauma.
Right.
It can be challenging. And I've seen it kind of go both ways, where it can be a huge struggle. And we'll, kind of talk about a couple of those struggles. But I've also seen some parents be like, okay, birth didn't go the way I wanted it to. I want this to go well. I will do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And it's very like validating to them. It's very healing for them. The power and control and the empowerment that you get from breastfeeding helps to kind of overshadow some of that disappointment from a difficult birth. And then sometimes it's just so hard because the babies the birth was hard for you. How is it for the baby? It's really hard.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
and you might straight up not want to. Like, you might straight up, when that baby is born, you might feel like tired and like you don't want to. You might feel like you're not immediately like, I imagine like I'd have a baby and I would like cry with joy. I looked at him with fucking dead face. I was on every drug imaginable, and I was just like, oh, like I wasn't like,
I know, I wasn't either.
My baby's here.
Yeah. No, me neither. And then I learned later, and I've always wondered if this is what it was, that, Pitocin blocks your natural oxytocin response.
Mm-hmm.
So and oxytocin, that like surges when the birth of your baby, and that is like your love, your bonding, your connectedness, all of that's supposed to happen when that baby is born. And Pitocin can block your natural oxytocin response. So were we just kind of like that dead face because of the medical intervention, as far as like the chemicals now surging through your body are interfering with what really should be happening?
Yeah, probably.
And now bonding is a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, right.
It takes a little longer.
I mean, the drugs wear off and everything gets fine. Oh, yeah. And also, I want to say, if anybody's pregnant listening, people have positive and empowering births in hospitals all the time. Yeah. Like, this doesn't mean that your birth is going to be like bad or something. It's going to be what it is. And however it is, you get to have whatever feelings you want to have about it.
But I think if you are pregnant, one of the great things about listening right now is just knowing and having the education behind, okay, if my baby isn't breastfeeding that well from the start, let's look at why that could be happening. It's not because they don't want to. It's not because they can't, so to speak, and they never will. It might just be the intervention from your birth that they just need to get past. And then it's okay. Like, you just need to work with it. But going into it thinking, okay, the baby's just going to breastfeed regardless of what happens, I think is, because everybody says breastfeeding so natural, breastfeeding so, don't worry about it. It's just going to happen. And it doesn't happen like that, especially with a complicated delivery. It might not happen like that. And then you just have to,
So what do we see happening?
So, maybe we should do our ads first, and then we can talk about what's happening. Like, yeah.
All right.
Like, that's like a perfect break spot for that. I think.
That is.
Yeah.
Transition. We'll be right back with our transition into our next part of this conversation.
Yeah, because we planned that, didn't we?
We did. Today's episode is brought to you by Just In Case nursing pads. Struggles with nursing pads that scrunch up in your bra, slip out of place, and leak through your top add unnecessary stress. Just In Case is committed to making breastfeeding more comfortable, less stressful, and more sustainable for new parents. Just In Case set out to redesign nursing pads from the inside out, incorporating their patented Confitex textile technology. Unlike other reusable nursing pads, award-winning Just In Case pads are super absorbent and leak-proof, so they won't let you down when you let down. Plus, because they don't contain a layer of PU plastic, they're more eco-friendly and can be tossed in the dryer with the rest of your wash, essential for busy new parents. Just In Case also has a range of award-winning, super absorbent, reusable underwear, perfect for postpartum bleeds, little wee leaks, or the eventual return of your period. They've got you covered. Badass breastfeeders can head to justincase.com. That's just, JUSTN, case, CASE.com. And use code BADASS15 for 15% off your purchase. And today's episode is also brought to you by Sarah's Chill. Never worry about safely storing your breast milk or formula again. Sarah's Chill was invented by a mom for moms and offers guaranteed convenience with their double-walled stainless steel container. A little bit of water and ice is all you need to keep your breast milk or formula safe for 20 hours. No more lugging around chunky coolers and dozens of containers. You can pump and double pump all day into one sleek container. The chillers are dishwasher safe, airport friendly, and last a lifetime. Use it for wine, coffee, or any of your favorite beverages or even food when you're done breast or bottle feeding. Head over to sarahschill.com. That's CERES chill.com, or check them out at Sarah's Chill on Instagram for more details, and use code BADASSBreastfeeders25 for 25% off of your purchase. And all of today's sponsors and the promo codes can be found at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com in our show notes under this episode. Also in our show notes will be further information about things we talked about in this episode. And at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you will find our other breastfeeding episodes, our resources, and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne. Yeah.
So let's get to it.
Yeah. What are some problems that people might have?
So probably one of the first and foremost things that we see is that the babies are super sleepy.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that is, I mean, they're going to be sleepy anyway. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, if they're, you have this like perfect delivery, your baby is going to be like wide awake. Like, that's not the case. But if there is a lot of medication involved, like if it's epidural, if it's pain medication, sometimes if there's like blood pressure issues, they might have you on magnesium, a magnesium drip, like those things, your baby might be very, very sleepy. And more so than if there was no medications involved. Like there's definitely a difference. Like I can, at this point of my career, like I can usually tell the difference with a baby that did not have a medicated delivery and a baby that did, because they're just a little bit more alert. They're more alert for the feedings. And sometimes babies where there's medication involved, they're just really a lot sleepier. And that can feel overwhelming and discouraging when you're trying to learn how to breastfeed and the baby just goes to sleep. And I see that all the time. And moms will be like, well, they just want to sleep there. Like, well, if I was next to my favorite person, snuggled up, that's probably what I would do too, is go to sleep, and was so tired and they're just...
Especially if you just got here, how exhausting. What a trip. I mean, it's only a few inches, but my God, it's the biggest trip you'll ever take in your life.
Yeah. So it is hard, but you have to just keep stimulating them. And it doesn't hurt to see a lactation consultant to kind of get that validation that this is normal and they'll get past it. Your baby is not always going to be this sleepy, but the medications do impact them. If you had a C-section delivery and you're still on, pain medications on day 3 or day 4, that does make the babies a little bit sleepy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about what it does to you. It makes you
totally.
sleepy.
Exactly.
So that is probably one of the most common things that we see is that sleepiness and how that can really impact babies and breastfeeding. And there are some babies where I'll be sitting there with the parent and I really have to stimulate the baby a lot to get a good feeding into them. So that is not, I don't want anybody to think that there's something wrong with their baby, that their baby's abnormal, that you have to constantly be poking them and prodding them to get them to feed. And that is not uncommon. They're just really sleepy and you have to help them. You have to help them along. They don't know what they're doing.
I know. I think that's a thing too, is that we think, well, breastfeeding is natural, but they don't know how to do it. It might be natural, but they don't know. You have to help them.
And when you take the natural out of the birth, that makes it very different too, and
they have to help them more. Yeah.
Right. And, we say, oh yeah, breastfeeding is so natural, but birth isn't natural anymore. It is not common to have a natural birth. I have a friend, colleague, I helped her with her kids and then we ended up staying friends. And her second baby was her first birth was, just traumatic. And then the second birth, she hired a doula. She had a unmedicated delivery. And I remember her telling me that when she was in the hospital, they came in, the next day to check and make sure everything was okay or whatever. And the anesthesiologist came in and went to look for the needle in her back. And she was like, I didn't even have an epidural. That is how common it is, though. They don't expect you to not have one.
Right.
It is very, right. I think it's
especially in the hospital. Yeah.
Yeah. It's 80 to 90% of births have epidurals. Right. Very, very, very common. And all these parents breastfeed too. So it's not like your baby's not going to breastfeed because they will. It might just take a little bit more effort.
Thing too. It's well, you had a C-section, so you can't breastfeed.
And that's not the case.
That's totally not true.
Yeah. I mean, 30% of people have a C-section?
Right.
Those babies breastfeed. I had a C-section. I breastfed 2. So it's, you can do it. You absolutely can do it. But sometimes those first few days in that first week can definitely be a challenge.
Well, yeah. And I had Jack was that terrible birth, and I had Exley at home in the most healing and empowering birth ever. And I still had to help him breastfeed.
Yeah.
He's a baby. He just got here. He's not breastfeeding and breathing and swallowing. Those 3 things, those are the only things that he can do. And doing them all together at the same time is a big deal to try to learn.
Yeah.
You just have to help them. They don't they don't just automatically know.
And when there's medication involved, that makes it even more difficult sometimes for that coordination. Mm-hmm. I see lots of babies who are struggling to get their suck coordinated. They might be a little bit disorganized. Maybe they can't figure out how to suck, swallow, and breathe and get all of that stuff coordinated together. It might take them a couple of extra days. And they get it after, but sometimes they need a little help in the beginning. And that's the kind of stuff we see sometimes with, deliveries that are a little bit more involved. If you have something if they got stuck, like Jack got stuck, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah.
If they're not in a great head down position, they get stuck. If they need, forceps or vacuum, that kind of thing can absolutely impact how you position your baby, because they might have some bruising, they might have some discomfort. normal. That is normal. That is a normal side effect to what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And we just need to kind of work it through and help you and your baby. Sometimes it's not anything with the baby. Sometimes it's the parent, especially if you have like how you had the episiotomy, or if there's a vacuum delivery, or if there was an extensive tear. Getting into a position where you're comfortable to breastfeed can be really, really challenging.
Yeah.
And I had a mom actually that she just had her second baby. And this is really interesting because just had her second baby. I saw her this week with her second baby. Her first baby was 6 years ago, and she had a sprained tailbone after her first baby. And I remember that very, very clearly. Like sprained tailbone, she could not get it into any kind of comfortable position to try to breastfeed him.
What does that mean? I guess I don't know what a sprain means. Whatever, it was injured. Oh my God.
Yes. So she couldn't, it was worse than a bruise, but not as bad as a break. So it was, but a bruised tailbone in and of itself is bad enough. But it was so like she had to do, it took months and months and months for her to be in a place where she was comfortable with being able to breastfeed him in any kind of position. And she, like, that's all really she keeps kind of going back to. I saw her this week and she was just like, remember how bad that was? Like, she's like, I'm so glad that didn't happen. Like it is so first and foremost in her brain right now. And this birth went much smoother, but she is still living that memory of how difficult that was for her.
Yeah, totally. That was the biggest barrier with my second birth, was remembering my first birth. I was terrified. People are like, weren't you scared to have a birth at home? I'm like, I was scared to death to go to a hospital again.
Yeah. That's usually what makes people have a birth at home.
I did not. I was so scared of that. I was scared of absolutely everything, and hired a doula. Anybody who's in this position, I hired a doula early on in my pregnancy, and she came over once every few weeks up until I gave birth, and we worked through it. She had me talking about, what's the worst case scenario? What can we, we just did basically therapy and worked through that trauma. And thank God we did, because it was so helpful.
Mm-hmm. And on the other end of it, I have parents that will contact me when they're pregnant for the same reason, that breastfeeding did not go well last time.
Yes.
What can I do this time?
Like that. Yeah. Last time it was terrible. Last time this happened. Last time that happened. What can I do this time? Is that going to happen again? People are so worried.
And it is. I even remember when I was pregnant with my twins thinking what do I do if they don't latch? What happens?
Yeah.
I don't know. How am I going to deal with that? What's my plan going to be? And it was twins. So it was really oh my God, my biggest focus was I didn't want to pay for formula for two babies, but that was pretty much my driving force. But it's a very scary thought of what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming into this again. How do I prevent it from happening? And it can be just such a traumatic memory the first time around. And I always tell parents when I get those calls, I always say to them, I am so glad you want to try again, because that would be enough for people to say, I don't want to do this again. I can't go through it again.
Yep.
And I'm always so, so, so proud of those parents that are just I want to try again. I want to be successful with my baby. I really want a good breastfeeding relationship with them. How do I make that happen? And it is just really what it comes down to, especially when you have, births that don't go the way you want. What it comes down to is really just kind of trying to take a step back and going, okay, it's going to be fine. I have things in place and we can figure out how to make this work. You really need to have your support people. Who they are. It is so important to have your village. It really is.
It speaks so much to the reproductive drive that is in us. Because if there wasn't there, people would never have more than one child.
Oh my God, never. Mm-mm.
You would never do that. There's no one who would ever revisit something like that twice if there wasn't some sort of, drive or something that you don't have control over. It's just interesting. And so also know for yourself that that's in you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that this is in you, that this is what's driving you forward, and that you can figure it out. You can work through any problem that happens and that comes up. You can work through anything. There's nothing that can happen that you can't work through.
Yeah. Like yesterday, I was having breakfast with my sisters, and I don't even remember what we were talking about. And one of my sisters said, I don't care if you've had kids, like you can do anything. Like nothing is in your way.
Yeah. And I'm not even like beyond just parenting and birthing, like in your life. There's
Just
absolutely nothing
absolutely.
that you can't work through. And if you've had kids that you can't deal with,
Sometimes I think that adds a level of like,
I think it does. Yeah.
You know, that just adds a different level of like, I don't even know what the word is that I'm looking for. Like just being able to,
it's just nothing that can be
with stuff.
It's nothing that can be replicated in any other area of life. You know, that it is life. It's you're giving life. There's nothing that's like it, you know, like this other experience is sort of like giving birth or this. No, there's nothing like that. There's nothing that somebody who hasn't done it can't even comprehend it. There's no, your brain can't go there if you've never done it. Anyway, we're so amazing, all of us. Mm-hmm. So just remember that when you're trying to get through things.
And the takeaway message is, you know, if you're struggling in the beginning to latch your baby, if your baby's not latching well, if they're not feeding well, if you're really struggling to kind of get to your ideal breastfeeding relationship, don't give it up. Don't give up, you know, like, because babies can still recover and do this. And usually what I tell parents is that I don't really see babies that don't ever breastfeed, you know, like babies that, that's what they're supposed to, like, they breastfeed, you know, like it's
they want to figure it out. They want to figure it out even more than you do. They just need to be given like the right, you know, just the right opportunity, the right intervention, and they'll do it. Yeah.
And it's very instinctive for them. What I see more is parents that are like, I can't do this anymore. It's too hard. I don't know what's happening. I'm too anxious over feedings. I'm just going to stop and give bottles. And that's usually what comes before the baby gives in. You know, like,
well, yeah. And that's also okay. I mean, that we have an episode coming up, right? When you don't reach your goals, when you don't reach your breastfeeding goals, which is going to come out in a few weeks. But like, you know, that happens too.
Yeah, it does.
You know,
it absolutely does.
At some point, you just have a point where you are like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to.
Sometimes your own, like, for your own mental capacity,
right?
You have to do what you need to do. And that's okay too. That is okay. But
also know that that's a decision that you're making for yourself, and it's okay to make that. Your baby's not making that decision. If you want to continue to, you know, address the problems, that you can and you will. And your baby will.
Absolutely. But you can do, like I was saying, you can do anything. You can do all of it. You can do any of it. You can get through it. It might feel like when you're in it, this is freaking the worst thing ever. But
well, yeah, and especially all those interventions, and you're dealing with all of that. There might be people around you being like, well, you know, it just doesn't work out. You know, it just doesn't work out. It just doesn't work out if you have a C-section. It just doesn't work out if you this. It's not true. Yeah, be okay with like mourning the grief and loss of that birth plan that didn't go the way you wanted it to go. And then don't let anybody tell you that you can't make what you want to make happen now.
Nice, you can do it. We'll be your cheerleaders.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's it.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.